Manna. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It's Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, and it's manna from heaven when Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys start their training camp as we steamroll into the next NFL season. Everyone's super excited. Where I am, I'm good. I'm still very much in baseball mode. To me, it's about the deadline, getting ready for October baseball. But when teams report, it's always good for nothing personal. You know, spring training's fun. When the owners come, they talk during spring training. You know the days. You've gotten used to it, I think. When the commissioners talk, it's after owners' meetings, all-star games, their playoffs, World Series, NBA Finals, etc., Super Bowl, media availabilities. Well, training camp, that's a big one in football. And you got to know that Jerry Jones is going to do something that is just Jerry Jones, that I will be able to make not just a segment, but a segment from heaven. You see, when the Cowboys come to camp, obviously there's a lot of media attention, which is strange because the Cowboys are a mediocre team at best. Total middle of the road. Our friends at DraftKings have their over-under in wins, their total, about 7.5. Now, it may be juiced as though, you're thirsty in the morning, but the reality is that nobody's expecting the Cowboys to be anything, which should not be a surprise to you that they're plus 5,000 to win the Super Bowl. It shouldn't be a surprise to you because they haven't won anything since the Super Bowl after the 1995 season, which, by the way, it's 2025. The last conference championship this team was in was that year as well, 1995, 30 years ago. Jerry Jones, the GM, Jerry Jones, the owner, they're getting ready to meet the media. His son, Stephen Jones, is involved, who says, Dad, listen, I'm going to want you to say not much. Let's go full Hamilton. Talk less, listen more. But no, I don't think that Jerry Jones subscribes to that musical or knows who Lin-Manuel Miranda is. For crying out loud, I'm not sure he knows who Micah Parsons' agent is, but I digress. The most amazing thing that's happening around the Cowboys, not Dak Prescott, that was last year, but he's going to come up. The big story is not that they stink again, because that's just a Tuesday. The big story is that Micah Parsons wants a new deal. Micah Parsons is not just your average ordinary player. He's really good. He's in the final year of a deal. He's getting $24 million this year. He doesn't know that he wants to play because he wants another deal. And so obviously there were going to be questions asked to Jerry Jones about Micah Parsons. And you'd think that Stephen Jones would have any sway over his dad, which he doesn't, and say, listen, when you're asked this question, here's what we'd like you to say. We'd like you to say that we are working closely with Micah and his great representative. We are trying very hard to get this done to make sure that the Cowboys' best interests are served, the fans' best interests, put them first, and the team and the player. But instead, when asked a question about Micah Parsons and the possibility of a long-term contract, listen to what, and this is actually Jerry Jones. If you're listening, the voice you're going to hear is Jerry Jones. If you're watching on Nothing Personal with David Samson, this is Jerry Jones.
Just because we sign him doesn't mean we're going to have him. He was hurt 6 games last year. Seriously. We've signed, I remember signing a player for the highest paid at the position in the league, and he got knocked out 2/3 of the year, Dak Prescott. So there's a lot of things you can think about when you, just as the player does, when you're thinking about committing and guaranteeing money.
Guaranteeing money. Is Jerry Jones absolutely on message perfectly? Do you think that Jerry Jones was watching Pablo Torre Finds Out and was reading the 61-page grievance, or was living through the reality of guaranteeing contracts to players, realizing, well, what MLB does is the worst plan in the world, guaranteeing contracts regardless of injury or poor performance? This is fantastic. Why are we paying people when they may not perform? Now, if Stephen Jones or the PR person or the new coach, Brian Schottenheimer, who was the first image on that sound on tape, and I wanted you to see that image of Coach Schottenheimer because, Coach, I know that you're taking over for Mike McCarthy, who just got fired, but this is what it is every day with the Cowboys. You will have that look of, oh my God, I am sitting here with Jerry Jones, and he's going to, no, he's not. Oh God, he's going to talk. Did you see Schottenheimer's face? It was glorious. And Jones was just getting started. Now, he didn't have the facts right, and you'd assume that had he rehearsed this or listened to his PR people, that maybe he would have had the fact that Micah Parsons only missed 4 games last year, not 6. The point is not a terrible one, but it's also the reality of sports. You are paying people. It doesn't happen outside of the sports world. Can you imagine the contract we signed with Metalark? Nothing personal. We will be with you all year doing episodes Monday to Friday. And then we just say, you know what? I don't feel that great. I got a little sprickel in my Genetic-gazoint, so I no show today. And I'm not talking about the days that we take off or that we're allowed to take off contractually. I'm talking about, because there's plenty of those in sports, I'm talking about like today, where I would just say, you know, I'm a little hurt. I got this, I got that. Can't do that. Still get paid? That would be amazing. I have a contract that says, here's the number of shows you do. This is what you get paid. In sports, you get a contract that says, here's the amount of money you get. Please, I hope you play. We're not going to say that your show has to be good, David, but that's understood. We're not going to say that you have to be a good player and perform, but man, you'd think that would be understood. Why Jerry Jones felt the need to throw shrapnel at Dak Prescott for being hurt, it's strange to me. But I used to work with an owner who, at the end of he's not old, now he's an octogenarian, but the reality is that owners have a very interesting mentality because they don't think they're wrong. They believe that they have all of the information, and they believe their analysis is always spot on because that's the way it's been in business, and that's the way it is when you are never told by anybody that you're wrong or that you may be looking at something differently because people treat you as an owner with such amazing reference. That may not be the word, Coca. What is the word? I know Sheldon's going to correct me, Coca. When you treat reverence? I just said reverence. Can you think of the word, Coca? If you can, yell it in my right ear. When you teach, when you play someone up and you treat them as though they are this godlike person because they know so much or they're so rich or they're your boss. Whatever, Coca. We both got A's in English, but that was a long time ago. So Jerry goes ahead and talks about Micah Parsons, and the reason he's talking about Micah is Micah's unsigned. But then he really couldn't help himself because he was asked several more questions, and I want to get to, before we play more sound, he talked a little bit about whether or not he was going to continue to be the general manager of the team. And he said that he actually thought about stepping down as GM, but then he said, not really. Like he totally faked out the entire Cowboys fan base. He said, small fractions of seconds. I would like to do an imitation of Jerry Jones, the owner, seeing whether Jerry Jones, the GM, would resign his position and how long the conversation would go. While he's looking out at another loss, another season without a conference championship. Jerry, that was a very bad season. Yep, not my fault. All right, that was it. That's all Jerry the GM says. Jerry the GM always says to Jerry the owner, dude, that wasn't me, that was you. Every problem we have here is not the GM. If I could get an owner to not be meddling, I would be the best GM in football, like executive of the year type stuff. But I got the most meddling owner in the world. And you know that I have absolutely credited Jerry Jones with doing what most owners won't do, all owners won't do. They don't name themselves GM. This is outstanding because Jerry Jones is not the only owner who acts as GM. He's the only owner who admits to acting like GM and the only owner who says, why would I pay someone to pretend that I'm not being the GM? But if you think that Jerry Jones is sitting around doing budgets and some of the work that GMs have to do, that is absolutely mind-numbing. The painstaking detail of what it is that people overlook, thinking that GMs just make trades, they just make signings, they just speak to agents. Well, Jerry Jones, the GM, doesn't even speak to agents. And his son covered him up because Jerry Jones was not happy about Micah Parsons' agent. He said, by the way, I don't even speak to Micah Parsons' agent. At one point, he said, I don't even know Micah Parsons' agent, which you know, of course, is a lie. Why? Because all the owners know Deshaun Watson's agent. Every one of them. I promise. You can't collude without knowing who the agent is. Oh, I'm just kidding. You know there's no collusion. Jerry, as part of the same press conference, threw more manna from heaven toward us. Listen to what else he said.
The other thing I would say is contracts are 4 or 5 years. Okay? There's a lot of water under the bridge if you step out there and do something in the first 2 or 3. You can get hit by a car. Seriously. And so there's a lot to look at over a lot of years that could make a big difference. Have you ever heard of any clubs committing to players and then they didn't pan out after they committed to them? We have. And so my point is there's of all the reasons in the world to, when you're under contract, and if you're not under contract, one of the things that exacerbates this is that you have a kind of a policy or a practice to have contracts but have like it's some kind of obligation to do something before the contract is over. Okay? In other words, not have the benefit of the contract. Well, that goes completely against the benefit of the club, which ultimately should be to put a winning team on the field.
He almost had it because the end of that, he's not wrong. What he's referring to is the old Jerry Reinsdorf, which is, I'm not going to give you a new contract in the middle of your contract. Just play out your contract, and then we'll give you a new contract. But why would I give you more money for the fact that you're overperforming? I absolutely agree with that because there is no refund when the player stinks. But what Jerry Jones, the problem is he's the wrong messenger for this. What he was trying to say is that when people are asking for these long-term contracts, the issue is what if they can't perform? What if they don't perform? And then what if they overperform? And if they overperform, then the club is expected to somehow make it right. And if they can't perform, injury, or don't perform, stink, then we're just stuck with it. But the impact in which he gave the message, side note, when you're giving a message and you're trying to make a point, one of the things you don't do is say, my point is. Because the best points that you make in a discussion or an argument is when you just make the points. You don't have to say, my point is. It's like saying, to be honest, I think the sky is blue today. Well, you don't ever have to say, to be honest, because it just means that people think, if you don't say it, then what do you mean? Then you're not being honest. If you have to say, my point is, what it means is that everything you're saying is not quite clear. But at the end, it was pretty clear to me what he was saying, and I agree. However, when you are negotiating with a player and you're having issues the way they're having with Micah Parsons, and this is no individual schlepper. Micah Parsons, Coca, would you have him as the top edge rusher in the league, or amongst, can we at least say in the top conversation as being the top edge rusher in the league? When tier 1 is what Coca would say. Is that a word of art? Does that have to do with free agency in football? Is that why you're saying tier 1, or is that just the way, is that your scale? You don't rank them? Okay. I would rank them. I mean, what, are you just scared to say, oh, he's the second best or the third best? Let's just say Micah Parsons, according to Matthew Coca, esteemed producer of Nothing Personal, who you hear every Friday, Micah Parsons is tier 1. All right. So he still has a year left on his contract. And all the talk is he reported to camp. I would hope so. And then is he going to practice? Because practice starts today. Practice? Practice? Yeah, practice. Everybody needs practice. I have a question about the Cowboys in general. When you think about Micah Parsons taking the field and practicing, is he, Jerry Jones, willing, if Micah Parsons does not play? What do you think? He's okay fining, not paying him, using everything possible? Well, think about what he said about Diggs, the cornerback. The Cowboys signed him to a long-term deal. He got hurt after signing that deal. And then Jerry Jones basically fined him, or he lost $500,000. $500,000 Diggs lost because he failed to show up for required offseason workouts. And Jerry Jones was quite blunt about that. He didn't earn it. He didn't come. That's in his contract. It would be very detrimental to the team not to abide by the agreement. Again, these are the sentiments shared by owners across all sports leagues. And you've heard us talk about the CBA. You've heard us talk about how the union views the CBA one way and management another, and they're both trying to enforce the four corners while trying to make the four corners wider, broaden the interpretation through grievances and decisions. You're always trying to make sure the other side knows you're paying attention. When you have a right, it is your obligation to exercise that right. Diggs doesn't show up, you have the right not to pay. It's the whole issue I had with the All-Star bonuses. You have the obligation to pay the All-Star bonus if the player's an All-Star. The player has the right to ask for it if he's not an All-Star, and the team has the option to pay it. But why? Especially when a player is not All-Star caliber, you don't get any sort of money back. I find it to be very interesting that Jerry Jones decided yesterday was the right day to have all these conversations. It's not a coincidence based on all the news around the NFL that we've been reading about, all the issues with the NFLPA, and there's an update today, all of the things that are happening. But Jerry Jones, as the spokesperson, is no longer effective or impactful. And I would expect that as this year progresses, you are going to be hearing way less from Jerry Jones, not way more. It's not just Jerry Jones who speaks to the media when training camp opens. As you know, all the owners do. And I like looking around and listening to other owners, and then obviously choosing the ones that fit my narrative as, wow, that's funny, that's topic worthy, that's show worthy. Mike Brown is the owner of the Bengals, and they've got a sitch, which we've discussed pretty in detail. The Shemar Stewart situation. Remember him, the draft pick who's not signed? Remember him, the one who wanted certain guarantee language, and the Bengals had a different idea of what the guarantee language would read in the contract? And then Stewart came out and said, well, this is total horse hockey. All of a sudden, they're changing the language of the guarantee. Have you ever been a part of a pension calculation at a company by chance where the pension fully vests in 10 years and then all of a sudden you're in your 8th year and they move the pension vesting to 12 years and you have 4 years remaining instead of 2? Have you ever been in a situation where you were a year away from something happening, becoming a partner at your law firm, and it was always an 8-year track and then somehow it became a 10-year track? These things happen. The goalposts get moved. Agreements change. Boilerplate language changes. Somebody is going to be in the Shemar Stewart seat where, man, I can't believe that I missed this by a year. But at the end of the day, it is the team's right to put whatever guarantee language it wants as long as it doesn't violate the CBA. So Mike Brown met the media and he spoke to Charlie Goldsmith of Fox 19, and he said, and this is a quote, "It's not about money. It's about the guarantee in the case of if he were to do something contrary to the discipline levels of the league." I don't think that's going to happen ever. That's what's holding it up. It's never happened as long as I can remember. His agent wants it to be if he acted in a terrible fashion. This is all hypothetical. I'm still quoting the coach, the owner. something that rises to the level of going to prison, we'd be on the line for the guarantee. This is fantastic. So I'm going to read between the lines and do some finding out. Guarantee language that we have in baseball, as players have found out, like Wander Franco and others, you go to prison, you're not getting paid on your contract. It is a violation of the provision in the contract, which goes through what you can do and what you can't do in order to make sure that your guarantee happens. I wish we could put in there, you have to hit 275. I wish I could put in there, you had to play 150 games. We can do bonuses for games played, but it can't take away the guarantee. It is absolutely common in contracts, including any contract you sign, no matter what industry you're in. You're in the clank, 4869. You're in the clink, you're out of luck. So the owner bringing up the prison situation is a little rough for me, because what he's basically implying there is that Stewart and his agent would like the guarantee to survive a prison sentence. I can't imagine that's the holdup. The Bengals may be arguing the guarantee language far more on the fringes. Maybe they're talking about being accused of a felony, not convicted. Maybe they're talking about being in the neighborhood or having any contact with those who are accused, not convicted. Maybe they're trying to protect from the crazy John Morant live Instagrams. The teams always are looking at different things that are going on with players and tweaking their guarantee clauses. It is totally normal. What people are asking, wrongly so, is why would you even draft a player if there's a history, or you're worried about behavior, or you're worried about any of these things? And the answer is you want the talent, but you need the protection, and you don't expect the guarantee language to get in the way of the protection that you need, which is reasonable by any metric. Any rational person would view it that way. But when the Bengals haven't signed their other player, Trey Hendrickson, and they're talking about him, and the Bengals GM is telling you, yeah, we're trying to get a deal done. We're hopeful we can get a deal done with Trey. He's earned the raise and the extension. We'll see if we can get together on something. That is the normal practice that teams would have, that they would work toward a deal with a player. There'd be conversation. It really seems to me like this owner does not want Stewart to be signed. It is true that when you've got the owner talking to the media and the GM talking to the media, you can plan sometimes the good cop, bad cop, where the GM will say, hey, it looks like we're going to get something done. We're looking forward to that. The owner can say, hey, I'm not so sure. My experience is it's normally flip-flopped, where the owner will say, yeah, we're looking forward to getting something done. And if it doesn't work, you let the GM meet the media and say, hey, this was me. I wasn't the owner. I wanted to have certain language in. I wanted to have certain protections in, because one of the things the GM is supposed to do is protect his owner. The Bengals just seem like a total mess right now. I don't exactly know how it's going to end, other than with 7 wins and total despondency. But will they get Shemar Stewart? I mean, we're down to the nitty-gritty, Coca. Camp's opening, but that's not, we never viewed, Coca, the start of spring training as when things had to get done. We preferred it because we would always say, hey, we don't want distractions. We want to focus on the season. But that was really just our way of pressuring the player into getting a deal done that we wanted more than he wanted. So I would say that the Bengals still have an opportunity to get these players signed, but each day that passes, this is going to be the most value-added thing you get all day. Each day that passes is a day that it's less likely the player and the team get together. It's stressful to be an owner. I know that owners do not get a lot of love. They don't get a lot of understanding. They're looked at as entitled billionaires who are paying entitled millionaires. I get it. Meanwhile, you all love sports. You all watch it. You all listen to it. You all engage with it in a way that makes it the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is. But being an owner, when you know that you have to decide and that there's no way around it. That's the thing that owners need to understand. No matter what you make your president or GM do, everybody knows the buck stops with the owner. Pun intended. Everybody knows when you're taking on money or shedding money that it's because the owner said it. And the GMs, you're going to hear a lot of this in the next week as we head toward the trade deadline in baseball. Hey, this was a baseball move. This is what we wanted. Yeah, the owner was totally supportive. He gave us all the resources we needed. It's just all straight poppycock. John Middleton is one of those owners. He owns the Philadelphia Phillies. He's always been up front, always been out front. John Middleton is very outspoken as an owner. He talks to the media more than a lot of owners do. He likes doing that, and the fan base likes it. The players ignore it mostly. At best, they're neutral toward it, no matter what they say after they've signed a deal. In general, owners and players, it's not that they're close because players want to be owners and owners want to be players. So definitionally, when you have that confluence of feeling, you get a level of closeness, but it's not, I would say, a symbiotic relationship. John Middleton was asked to comment on the Phillies and comment on the trade deadline, and we would have our owner, when people ask for comment, just, hey, he's not talking. No comment at all. John Middleton does not fall into that category. Yes, we're talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. Did you see the game last night, Coca? The Phillies won on a walk-off catcher's interference, which was, I've lost games myriad ways. I mean, we'd have to fact check this. So this is irresponsible journalism. I think with my thousands of losses over 18 years, I think I lost 1,400 games, 1,600 games. I don't think one of those losses was on a walk-off catcher's interference. Not one. Do you know how I know? It's not happened in MLB since 1971. 1971. If you're doing the math, that's 54 years ago. That was the last time that any game ended on a catcher's interference. Catcher's interference is when the hitter swings the bat and the bat comes in contact with the catcher's glove, any part of the catcher. That turns into catcher's interference. It's like a balk, automatic base. Man on third, catcher's interference, guess what? Game over. So the Phillies are in a position where they're fighting with the Mets, going back and forth, half up, half down. Both teams are playing, I don't know, Coco, would you say the Mets are playing mediocre? I think yesterday we explained to you that the Mets are playing like a team that's going to lose 100 games. So John Middleton talks about Dave Dombrowski, his GM, and says that Dave Dombrowski will be looking for upgrades. Dave Dombrowski is always aggressive. Do you know the scouting report of your GM, Philly fans? I think you do. Dave Dombrowski won a ring with the Marlins in 97 before I got there. Dave Dombrowski is a Hall of Fame executive. Remember, he went to the Tigers, and what he did, he puts the A in aggressive. He puts the O in other people's money. He loves to spend, and John Middleton is the perfect partner in crime because John Middleton is the one who would tell you, I love to spend stupid money. You deserve a raise. You deserve a raise. You deserve a raise. You played well. I'm going to pay you more than I thought I was going to pay you and that you were guaranteed. That's the John Middleton. However, he was pretty open and honest about it, saying that I've got to look at the team, not just for today, but I have to look at the team in 5 years and 10 years because I'm still going to be the owner and I can't do anything that is going to put us into a down cycle for an extended period of time. That makes perfect sense. Will the Phillies make a trade? He certainly sounds like an owner trying to prepare you for not. Wait to see is when we tell you something happens, and if it doesn't happen, great. If it does happen, fine. The Phillies are in a luxury tax situation. Bad one. So as an example, they signed David Robertson and they gave him prorated $16 million. What that means is if you've got 3 months of a season left, you're going to pay him at the rate of $16 million, but there's only 3 months left, so you're only paying him $8 million. But the Phillies have to pay $8.8 million because they pay 110% tax penalty. So actually, David Robertson may be paid prorated 16 million, but actually out of pocket is 16 million. Here's where the union gets something funny. It's that the player is only getting half of what the team is paying to have that player. Think about that for a second. The Phillies will pay $16 million for the right to have David Robertson, but David Robertson will only get $8 million of that. Does that make sense to you? Well, it was agreed on by every side. But the wait to see is that the Phillies will add at the trade deadline. I didn't say they'll take on money, Coca. That's not the official wait to see. The wait to see is that the Philadelphia Phillies will add to their roster prior to July 31st. Wait to see. Don't forget, today is Tuesday. We'll have a guest today if he shows, which he will. Evan Drellich, the great senior writer for The Athletic. I hope he does, given the fact that the article he wrote yesterday has gotten so much attention, but I expect him to show up. Tomorrow, our second hour is the So You Want to Talk to Samson hour. It's already Wednesday. It feels like it comes so quickly weekly. It's always weekly. Do yourself a favor. Take out your phone right now during the show. Don't hit pause if you're live. Hit subscribe. But when the show is done, pick up your phone and dial 631 DPS, which is 377 4869, which is how we make mistakes and we cure them. Dial the number. It's a real number.
You wanted to talk to Samson?
I'll answer.
Now
That's me.
want to hear what you have to say. And if you want to do it on the show, you better leave a message with a question, and it better be good. So leave a message after the beep.
I'm really leaving a message on the phone number live during the show. 631-377-4869. That's my question. Leave yours and we'll answer them. You may make the show. It's time for the review, Coca. You knew I was reviewing Dying for Sex because I told you yesterday. You knew I was going to watch the last two episodes, which I did. You'll know that at 6:56 Eastern time, I had to replace my tissue box, which I use for general allergic runny noses, but I also use to wipe away tears of joy and sadness. And then I use my handkerchief. If you're not watching this, I've got an actual handkerchief that I use to wipe away the shards of the tissue that gets stuck in my mustache of 1 to 2 day growth. Dying for Sex, starring Michelle Williams, Sissy Spacek, Rob Delaney. You want to know why it got nominated? I'm going to tell you. It's about someone who's got stage 4 cancer. And it's about someone who is trying very hard to figure out her sexual desires and not die without fully exploring that which she didn't get to explore while being married. So she gets diagnosed with stage 4, leaves her husband, oh my God, and then all of a sudden enters into this relationship, quote unquote, with Rob Delaney. Watch Catastrophe as well. It's, I'm going to say, the best piece of acting I've seen this year outside of Owen Cooper, who was the boy in adolescence. So I'm not going to get caught in recency bias. While I love Jeremy Allen White and The Bear, and there's such great acting everywhere, God. But what Rob, Stacey, Sissy Spacek, and Michelle Williams did is the best ensemble acting of any show I've watched. Please, if you watch Dying for Sex, know you're going to be entertained. You're going to cry. Stage 4 cancer, as I know and many of us know, up close and personal, it's not a joke, and it doesn't end well. Almost always. But when Dying for Sex closes out, you feel like that you have accomplished something with the time you spent watching the series. It's on Hulu. It's called Dying for Sex. And my hat's off to Michelle, Sissy, Rob, the rest of the cast, Jay Duplass, all of the producers, writers. One of the best shows you'll see. One of you suggested, and I love this, thank you. If you happen to live in St. Louis, and you happen to be a fan of the show, maybe even a fan of me, and you send movie suggestions, there's a good chance that I'm going to follow them. If you're from anywhere in this world and you send movie suggestions, you're going to be put on a list. Some things move up the list faster, like My Mom Jane. My Mom Jane is a documentary, and I'm watching it today, I promise, and I will review it tomorrow, I promise. Coca, can you get me Will Levi's phone number, please? Do you have that handy? Is it 631-377-4869? Because I want to call him. What? I know you say Levis, but I say Levi's. It's spelled Levi's, like the jeans that I love wearing. The 2930s, and you get to wear your waist on the back, and you're mortified, and some people scratch it off. Except if you're proud of it, you don't ever want to have a higher number first. Levis. All right, start the segment over. 4869. You know who's going to have a lot of time to watch movies? It's Will Levis. The quarterback for the Titans decided that it was time to undergo season-ending shoulder surgery. The reason I wanted to talk about this is not that Cam Ward is now going to start for the Titans, and that's exciting for about 11% of the people watching the show. What I am more interested in is when a player gets injured and makes a decision on surgery, rehab, maybe a PRP. There is a absolute misunderstanding in the media and with fans. We can't force players to do anything medically. Not because we don't want to. The player's body is the player's body. When we do an MRI with a pitcher and the pitcher has a torn ligament in his elbow and Tommy John surgery is needed and the player gets a second opinion from a list of doctors that are approved by the union and the commissioner's office to grant second opinions. MRI gets read, maybe a new MRI. There's a tear. We can't make the player get surgery. There's no way back. The player, in theory, could sit on the side while not violating provisions of the contract where the guarantee language says you must maintain first-class physical shape. We protect ourselves against people sitting around and eating candy and cupcakes all day long. But we can't argue to an arbitrator that a player who doesn't get surgery will lose the guarantee portion, because what the player will argue back is surgery is one way to do it, but there's not 100% guarantee that I'd be back. So I'm doing strengthening, I'm doing rehab, I'll do a couple PRPs, and I'm going to try to get back in shape. That's my job. I, under the contract, have to rehab the injury to get it back to a position where I can play. When we say, hey, surgery is going to be it, and you say no, eventually you may have to say yes because the proof's in the pudding. The arguments that happen is when the player says, I'm ready to go, and we say, no, you're not. You're throwing 70. Then we've got protection in the contract which says not just first-class condition, but you have to be able to perform the duties for which you are paid in a manner consistent with your level of performance upon the signing of the contract. Now, it doesn't mean that if you used to blow 97 that you can turn into an 89 guy who has command. You're still able to perform your task in a first-class way. What we are talking about is if you threw 95 and then all of a sudden you throw 70 because your elbow isn't attached. It's always very clear. I don't recall. I've definitely had issues with players where I felt we waited too long for surgery. I felt like we didn't need a second or third opinion. I felt like a PRP wasn't going to work. I felt like rehab wasn't going to work. Strengthening wasn't going to work. And just because one guy, Tanaka, happens to avoid Tommy John through various ways, it's super hard to do it. I don't recall a situation where we actually had to threaten the guarantee portion of a player contract because of the player not choosing a course of action. When we've got a situation where we've got two players for one position, and then one of the players gets hurt, we're not happy, but we're actually okay. And this is an admission that, again, is me as president. It's not me today. But when we've got two people fighting for any position and the players make the decision for us, we feel better. So let's say you've got two people who are going to play second base and you don't know who you're going to play. And then one of them is hurt and out for the year. Well, you know you're going to play. You can't choose wrong. When the Titans are thinking about who is going to be their quarterback, and they're looking at Cam Ward, they're looking at Levis, and the view was, hey, Levis is going to fight this out with Cam Ward. Levis may get the job. As a matter of fact, he's going to take snaps, and we'll see what happens. And then he walks in the office and says, listen, I think for me, I met with my agent. I think now's the time. I got a shoulder thing. Our camp, this is a player talking, believes that me performing badly is going to hurt my value more than me being hurt and not performing at all. My answer as the team president was, I'm not sure that's true, because if you get surgery and don't perform at all, then there's no distinguishing that. You didn't play. If you play and you don't play well, you get to say, hey, I was hurt. And then teams will decide whether you're lying or not, but they'll look at your medical and know that you were hurt. So why don't you try to play through it, because you're protected against poor performance? But a lot of players don't view it that way because they're told by their agents and their union. It's sort of like when you take a standardized test and you have to know in advance whether or not you will get a demerit for a wrong answer. Because if you don't know a multiple choice question and you get negative points for a wrong answer when you don't know, you're supposed to leave it blank. When you don't get a negative for a wrong answer, you must answer every question, even if you don't know, you guess. I had a system, Coca. I don't know if you did on multiple choice questions. I had the quartile system. I used to have a watch that had a second hand, and wherever the second hand was, that's what I would guess. If it's between 0 and 15 after the hour, I would guess A. Between 15 and 30, I'd guess B. 30 and 45, C. 45 and 60, D. I would never guess E, all of the above, some of the above, none of the above. So I just had a system totally consistent if I weren't going to have any negative score to getting a question wrong. For players, it's the same. If Levis had played through and not won games and not been crisp and not been able to throw, and then they went to Cam Ward, then he got the surgery, I think that he would have had a story to tell. Now, his story is different, which is 0 playing, didn't beat out Cam Ward, didn't lose to Cam Ward, and now he's got a year to get himself, what he said, is healthy and in a position to come back. The Titans had to say something about this, and so they did. They said, we support his decision to focus on his long-term health. He approached the offseason with professionalism and showed clear growth as a leader. We remain confident in his full recovery. Close quote. Phew, not in the quote. We're going with Ward. Yeah, not in the quote. I don't know, Coca. I didn't feel in any way that the Titans were despondent beyond repair that Levis is undergoing season-ending shoulder surgery. I guess we'll find out. Nothing personal pick of the day. Stand up, Milwaukee, right now. The Milwaukee Brewers have played 100 games. They've won 60% of them. The total number of teams in Major League Baseball to have won 60% of their games is, wait for it, 1. That's it. The Milwaukee Brewers have the best record in baseball. Not the best record in their division. They're leading their division. You can't have the best record in baseball and not be leading your division. They have the best record in the National League. Dodgers. Phillies, Mets, Cubs. You can't have the best record in baseball without having the best record in the National League. Let's look at the American League. Tigers. The Tigers. The Blue Jays. The Yankees. No. The Milwaukee Brewers have the best record in all of baseball. Remember what our pick of the day was yesterday? Somehow, a team that had won 10 games in a row was plus money. I think our friends at DraftKings may not have gotten that one right, because Woodruff at plus money? Are you kidding me? We won. The Brewers took their 11th straight. 11th straight. Remember when the Red Sox had a 10-game winning streak? Poof, it can end. You can win 11, then lose 10, and you're only one game over 500 in the last 3 weeks. I've seen it. That can happen. You can go 1-9 and then still win a World Series because you go 10-1 in the 11 games right after that. Seen it. Check 03. There's always going to be bad stretches. Someone said to me yesterday, the Dodgers are 2-10 in their last 12, now 3-10. Ohtani won his 3 innings. How can they win? Well, that's a normal stretch. It's going to happen multiple times during the course of a season. But the Brewers are on a heater. I don't know if you watched, Coca, the Dodger game. Dave Roberts told us that Ohtani wouldn't go 4. Ohtani went 3. Ohtani hit a bomb. Remember, he's not the leadoff hitter anymore. Hit a bomb. Of course, he gave up a bomb. Does it count when you're the pitcher and the designated hitter in the same game and you give up a home run but hit a home run? Don't we do that? What's the sport? I think it's basketball and hockey where they focus a lot on this plus minus, like where you are when you're on the court, how your team does. We don't have that in baseball. We don't have it in football. But if there's a two-way player, I think you have to have it. If you give up 2 and drive in 3, aren't you a +1 for the game? Isn't that all you'd want? Check out Ohtani. But anyway, we had the Brewers +104. We won, which brings us to 97-91. Coco, we have been on a bit of a heater. What do we got today? The Houston Astros are playing the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are going with Mr. Rodriguez, and I call Mr. Rodriguez purposefully because you may remember him as the one who wouldn't be traded to a contender, didn't want to move his family for a contender, then signed that huge free agent deal, and it's just been terrible, hurt, ineffective. He's going for the D-backs against Framber Valdez and the Astros. The Astros who continue to outperform expectations over the course of what I would describe to be a complete dynasty. Framber Valdez has been good, not great. Cy Young not happening. But when you look at where the Astros are, they got through their series with the Mariners, and they're right back where they started when this break, the All-Star break, happened, which is 5 games up on the Mariners. That's how quick it can happen. They've won 2 in a row. The Mariners have lost 2 in a row. The Mariners had it down to 3, right back up to 5. And for whatever reason, Valdez is only -126. So we're going to try to stay hot here, Coca. We're going to take the Astros and Valdez over the Diamondbacks and Rodriguez. That is the nothing personal pick of the day. Stay tuned. We still have an hour left. And if things go as planned, you're going to see Evan Drellich on the other side of the break. Welcome back to hour 2 of Nothing Personal. Today is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. And you know what Tuesday means. That means we have a guest. And today we have the perfect guest. You may know him as Evan Drellich. You may know him as the writer of the book, Winning Fixes Everything. Or you may know him as the senior writer at The Athletic. Or you may have read his story just yesterday about the Commissioner's Ambassador Program. Totally prescient. Please welcome Evan to the show. How are you, Evan?
David, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, I assume you're booked like crazy because you drop what used to be known as a Woj bomb, and you cover labor, some of really the best in the business, I would say, and we're going to get to that. But you wrote an article yesterday that came out in The Athletic, and again, I tell our audience, if you're not subscribing to The Athletic, you're making a mistake. The juice is way worth the squeeze. The writers they have, the reporting they do, what they do. We've talked about paywalls. This is a critical part of journalism today. And you decided that it was time to get to the bottom of Dexter Fowler and CC Sabathia et al. Tell our audience a little bit about what you found, what you wrote, and why it's become such a huge story.
Well, listen, the participants kind of made this easy for me because they went public. They were on a different program on Foul Territory. There'd been some conversation that existed. And I love doing things on the record these days. Not everything I do is on the record, but I love when people are out there putting their name to things. And this was stuff that was out there. The Players Union, for some time now, has been not up in arms, but irritated by the number of ex-players that the commissioner's office has hired and brought in to work for it. It's a better roster than the union has, and that's no knock, no offense on what the union does have. But they've got this group of all-stars. I mean, if you're putting a fantasy baseball team together, around the year 2012, this is a great group of guys that they have. And what's really irking the union is that some of these guys, not all of them, some of them are going with the commissioner to these annual visits that he's holding with every team. And he's talking to the teams about economics. He's trying to, it seems, push for a salary cap. And the union thinks, well, some of these guys that the commissioner is bringing along with him, they might be pushing for a cap too. And, a guy like CC Sabathia holds a role with the commissioner's office beyond this ambassador program. So he's a more frequent participant. But it's a really interesting thing. You zoom out. You have a players union, and then you have a commissioner's office that's saying, we're just going to recreate or create a different group of players that's going to liaison with your players. And there's good purposes to it. It makes a lot of sense for the commissioner's office. They took a lot of heat for not connecting with players well enough, but it's a very interesting added wrinkle to the already complicated labor dynamics in baseball.
You didn't call me for this story because if you had, I would have gone on the record to tell you what the background is of the Commissioner's Ambassador Program, because one of the people involved with it is Mike Hill, and it has been going on for years, even before the last CBA, where they wanted what teams do. Every team does this. We've got special assistants to the owner, special assistants to the president, special assistants to the general manager. You bring back players, alums of your team, well-known, maybe Hall of Famers. I had Andre Dawson and Tony Perez, and you bring them in for several reasons. 1, community appearances. 2, you want them around the players because you want the players to have the fountain of information and experience that these players have to draw on. So you may dress them during BP. They're watching games with us, and then they're in the clubhouse. Basically, the purpose of it is almost like credibility, bought instant credibility when you have these players around. But not one time, not once, did we say to one of our players who were now special assistants, hey, we're having an issue with these games in Puerto Rico. We're having an issue with scheduling a doubleheader, or all of the labor things that come up during the course of a season. Not once do we say to those players, Andre or Tony or Niner or anybody, hey, go speak to the guys. You got to go get those guys to do something. The commissioner does not need anybody in the ambassador program to do anything as it relates to labor. And the reason, Evan, is that they go against Tony and Bruce, the two heads of the union, and they've got that. They don't need the players in the ambassador program to attempt to get information to players. They're doing just fine without them. So I thought this whole story was a big nothing burger. And when Tony and Bruce get upset on foul territory, the commissioner loves that because it distracts them from really what matters.
Yeah, look, certainly the position of everybody I've talked to at the commissioner's office, and I was able to talk off record with some of these guys who were part of the program, but nobody wanted to be quoted. What they're saying is, look, we want to help grow the game. This was Dexter Fowler, who was on foul territory's big point is, I'm not here to pick sides. And I think it is it's an aggressive assumption to believe that the commissioner's office would hire a group that is now 19 and say to each one of them, you have to be indoctrinated into our bargaining beliefs, and you have to then spread those bargaining beliefs. And I don't think the union actually believes that. I think there's a smaller group of guys that the union is a little bit more leery of because they seem to pop up more in these meetings. But look, a lot of these guys are not going to every one of these meetings, and they're showing up at All-Star games, they're showing up at different league events. And you're right, credibility is the word. And Rob Manfred took a lot of heat during the last round of bargaining and really over the tenure of his commissionership for not having good enough relationships with players. So he goes out and he gets this whole group of not nobody players. I mean, these are all stars who he can bounce ideas off of, who he can bring to events. If you're going to a community event, wouldn't you love to see a guy like CC Sabathia
or Ken Griffey?
Right, and it's a long list of great players, and it's a very touchy, complicated thing because anytime you have a perception when there's a union involved, are people getting too close to management? Are you sidestepping the union? You get into all this nuance that has to do with labor relations, and you just have these guys that seem to be in the middle going, look, I'm not really about that. I'm here to try to grow baseball, and look, I get free flights to the All-Star game. Isn't that fun?
I would say that if Rob ever hired Max Scherzer, then I would be concerned that there was something amiss going on, though I don't really see that happening. But I think that Rob, what he's doing, and my history with Rob, and I tell the audience this, there's always a disclaimer that I was involved when he was voted as the next commissioner, but he wants to be cool. And he actually yesterday went on Pardon My Take. And his view is, I love having these players around who can be front-facing, truly the word is ambassadors to the game, because whenever I'm in a room, I don't want people looking at me. I'd rather people oogling over the players. And when I show up and I've got Ken Griffey on my left arm and I've got CC Sabathia on my right arm, it's better than Elle McPherson and Cheryl Teagues, which just shows my age a little bit. But this is exactly what Rob wanted to do. And I am just laughing to myself about the union focusing on this when you're about to start a stretch that is just going to be insane in terms of covering the real collective bargaining negotiations that are going on outside of the ambassador program. And frankly, outside of Rob, it's going to be Dan Hallam and a few specific owners. What is your mindset in terms of going into this set of bargaining right now?
Well, this is why it is interesting and why it's still somewhat relevant, because if you're Rob and you have a group of owners who want you to push for a salary cap, and I think it's safe to sit here today and assume that there's going to be a proposal for a salary cap. I'm not reporting this as a firm decision that the commissioner's office has made. I just think it's a reasonable assumption at this point that they're going to try. And it's the thing that for all of time, the players in this sport have fought against. Well, then why don't you pull out all the stops? You try everything you can to lay the groundwork, because the only way you're going to get a cap is if you convince enough players that it's good for them, that it is better for them than the current system, that they should make a change and ignore what the leaders at their union are saying. And so you're right, David, that what's going on in cap is really kind of small fish in the bigger picture. But it's also a little bit of a nothing to lose play, where you're up against a pretty big fight here, that it's relatively unlikely, but not impossible. And so if you can convince some young players with a guy like CC Sabathia, that, there's merit to this system that all the other sports have, but baseball players have always stood against. There's some value in that, right? And I think
But there's a bigger issue, Evan, because go back and remind everyone, or I'll do it with you, the vote that ratified the CBA was voted for. Here's how it works. It's not every player who gets a vote. It's 30 team reps plus the 9 members, I believe is the number of the Executive Council of the union. There's 39 total votes. And what happened was all of Boris's guys on the council voted against the CBA that was actually ended up being ratified. But the team reps all voted for it because younger players, not yet arbitration eligible, watching a year of their career pass, about to miss a check, don't want to get a second job, which they had to do as minor leaguers. So already there is precedent where talking to the players, making sure they understand what is the actual negotiated CBA, that's going to win the day more than all of the posturing that Tony and his group that they do.
Yeah, and it's 38. And look, I think the push for a cap is a very interesting thing. You can argue that with a federal investigation going on, and one of the people who was connected to that investigation, Lloyd Howell, the head of the NFL Players Union, just stepping aside, the Players Union is not at its strongest in its history at this moment. There's just no way around that. And it's interesting that the salary cap is the one issue that has always galvanized players. And I think you can argue that the best strategy would not to be to give the thing that kind of unites players or has historically united players. It would be to find something else. And so what I think is going to happen here, if I'm in the prediction business, we're going to have another offseason lockout by 2026, the end of 2026. This will be probably $13 billion in the industry. Let's say it's roughly split between the two sides, $6.5 billion a year each to the players, to the owners. It's going to be the exact same thing as last time. If there are missed games, it'll be a few missed games at most. There's no world in which it is a rational decision to shut down the sport, if that is what is necessary, for a prolonged period of time to get to a cap. The owners want their franchise values to look more like they do in the NBA and NFL. To get that, they need to get a cap. The damage you do, the revenues you lose in that path, assuming the players don't just say, okay, we'll do it. I just don't see it as being worth it. And if we didn't see games missed last time, after the players were angry for 10 years, didn't miss a single game, I just can't imagine we're going to go, well, we're selling our franchises for $2 billion instead of 3.2. And boy, that's worth missing $6.5 billion in annual revenue for. I just don't see it.
Well, I think that there's another side to it, Evan, though, which is when I was around for the CBAs during my 18 years, we never had a group of 8 owners who were together, who were what they were called labor hawks. Jerry Reinsdorf is the number one example. The labor hawk, meaning that he always thought the deals were bad, he wanted to hold out, was willing to shut down the game, and wanted to get in line the economic disparities that exist, especially in his own city. So he was always a labor hawk. You didn't have 8 of them. What you have now, though, is a bunch of owners who don't owe Bud Selig any favors. And that was a huge thing back then, where Bud had a lot of control over the room. The room is really different now. And I'm not saying Rob doesn't have control. What I am saying is that Rob plays a different game than Bud does. And Rob is counting always to 23 and trying to make sure there aren't blocks of 8. But if there is a block of 8, which this time there could be, that's what would make more missed games. Because when you say $6.5 billion, that's if you lose an entire season of revenue. But the fact is, these teams don't trade on multiples of revenue ever, no matter what Forbes says. They trade on an ego premium. And so if there is a way to get the costs better under control, which means getting the contracts at the upper end lower in terms of number of years, in terms of what the total notional value is, and you've got to sacrifice games, and a lot of them, you may have 8 owners this time who are willing to do it.
I think the 8 owners who would want it most are the small market guys. And I think they're the 8 owners who would also be hurt the most. And the wild card for me, that's why I think it's important for Rob to, you show these guys you did it. You try. Look, I tried. I put a cap on the table and we stood firm on this for months. It's February now. We're getting to the point that's what I think is going to happen. I think Rob is going to wait as long as he can on a cap proposal.
Does it remind you of something from earlier this century called contraction? Where contraction
didn't happen, right?
I don't know if you were around. Were you around in
I was a
2000,
little guy.
2001?
I was a little guy.
Yeah, you're so young. So contraction was a major, major labor issue where they wanted to get rid of two teams, the Expos and the Twins. And at one point, the Marlins may have been one of the teams, but one of the teams was the Twins back when Carl Pohlad was the richest owner in the game, the owner of the Twins. And that was the team that was going to be contracted. And it was one of those deals that was put on the table, and MLB stood in, they stood their ground, and then it disappeared. And contraction was always a bargaining chip. And so what you're hoping is the salary cap will again be a bargaining chip. The difference now is that in that room of owners, they look at the other leagues and the franchise valuations. And they understand that the NBA has caps on contracts, contract lengths, age of the player matters. NFL does not have fully guaranteed dollars the way MLB does. And all of these players, Evan, which we don't even have time to talk about, getting paid to be all-stars when they're not all-stars. When the fact is, when they stink, we don't get any money back. Management never gets any money back. What worries me about the length of this lockout is you may have owners who say it's actually totally worth it because our only chance of increasing the value of our team is if we have hope in our market. And the only way to have hope is not to have the difference between the Marlins and the Dodgers because the other leagues don't have that. You'll still have rebuilding teams. You'll still have stinky teams, but the collar is way smaller than what exists in baseball.
The wild card to me, and I'm not saying that's impossible. This might shock some people, but as a reporter for The Athletic, I'm not a billionaire. So I really don't know exactly how they think. But you've new owners, David Rubenstein, Steve Cohen. What do those guys want? You buy into baseball to be in the club and to be loved, particularly a guy like Steve Cohen, whose business past checkered, right? You want the adulation that you've received. If you shut down baseball and you do it for an extended length of time, there goes that love that you were trying to gain. That it's really the one thing you can't buy. He can buy as many pointing man sculptures as he wants, but you can't buy the love. And so I don't know. I have no idea if those owners would sit there and go, I want to be hated for a year or potentially longer than that. And I think that's one of the things we've got to see, and we've got to see how effective MLB's ground campaign is at the end of the day at getting the players and saying a cap is better for you. And the one thing we haven't talked about that I think the commissioner's office would say how you're missing the big thing here is the media environment. The attempt to centralize more local rights, to take more local rights national, which is all a part of the cap. You want more media to be national, so you need to change revenue sharing, and that's where a cap becomes a part of it. And it's mind-numbing stuff for a lot of people, but there's a very, very large set of TV deals coming up in 2028 that this CBA sets up, and the players have a lot of power to say, yeah, you can change revenue sharing or you can't.
But think about the timing. The new national deal's 28, the collective bargaining agreement for 27. If you miss a year, which I'm not saying they're going to do, but if you miss a year and you start again with new national deals, everyone knows the terms. Everyone knows what their piece is. Right now, you have owners. David Rubenstein's a great example. He actually went public, which is something under Bud we were never allowed to do ever. He'd fly in from Milwaukee and pour Diet Coke on our head if we ever talked labor publicly. David Rubenstein's been out there saying, hey, this is not right. And you talk about beloved. He's not beloved in Baltimore. Steve Cohen is only beloved when the team wins. They go 11-21 over a stretch of 3 weeks, and all of a sudden it's, hey, what's going on with these Mets? So it's not that fans necessarily are all about just spend money. It's spend money, and win. And if you don't have that opportunity to do either of those, then it may be worth it to actually take a stand.
I think the owners are kind of hurt by the fact that baseball is so random. Now, you haven't had a top 15 market team win the World Series since the Royals, but I think the playoffs are a crapshoot, right? The competitive balance. Here's the one argument that I think is really valid. You are never going to see a middle or small market team sign the absolute best player in free agency. The Kansas City Royals are never going to go out and sign Shohei Ohtani if he's available, right? But putting player preferences aside, it's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean to me that those teams that can't sign those guys will not compete. And that the heart of the issue that the commissioner's office is going to appeal to fans with is we can't compete. It's just not true, right? This sport is so random. All you have to do is get into the playoffs and see what happens. There's a reason the Mets haven't won the World Series in however many years, right? You have a better chance as a big market team. But I think that's the irony of the whole thing, is that competitive balance could it be better? Sure, it could be. But could
every league says that, Evan.
Compete?
Every league says, hey, our competitive balance is great. And then Jason Stark, who you work with at The Athletic, does a column saying competitive balance. You're complaining about baseball? We've got the most competitive balance ever. We've got teams that are in the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, and I'm a shining example with our ring from 2003, we needed so much luck that year to win the World Series. Every year a team does. I can't name the Dodgers starting pitchers from last World Series. Can you? Can you name the starters for games 1 through 4 that the Dodgers put out there last year's World Series?
No, I could tell you everybody in the labor relations department at the commissioner's office, though.
The point is that they had the big payroll, big market team. Oh my God, it's Dodgers, Yankees. Meanwhile, injuries galore. And I believe, and Coco will correct me, or our audience will, I think the Dodgers went with a bullpen game in the World Series, if I'm remembering correctly. Think about that concept for a minute. And what we're saying is what it takes to win. And to get into the playoffs, you've had small market teams in the playoffs every single year, whether it's the Brewers and how competitive they've been, the Rays, you've had the Royals, you've had the Guardians seem to be in the playoffs, the Twins. So to me, it's not necessarily about getting into the playoffs. It is the feeling that when you look at how you cover mistakes, and I don't know how to say it any more clearly, what the Dodgers can do that small market teams and small payroll teams can't is every time they make a mistake, and all teams make the same number of mistakes, but the Dodgers just keep going and signing more players and writing off the mistakes. But if you have a limit on what your payroll can be, what your cash flow is, you can't cover your mistakes. That's what the owners are trying to protect against.
Right. And, you look at the cap leagues, you still have franchise. Look, I grew up a Mets, Jets, and Knicks fan. I was born in 1987. Do you know how many World Series or championships I have seen in my lifetime?
So Mets 0, Jets 0, Knicks 0.
Right.
So wait, it turns out that you've seen 0.
Right. I've never seen a team I care about win anything. So maybe that explains a lot. But the point being, you get to a cap system. This is the thing. If let's make up numbers. Let's say you're at $300 million for the top, $200 million for the floor. Well, the Pirates, by the way, $200 million teams would revolt at that figure. But let's just pretend $200 million for the Pirates. They're gonna be there every year. They're never gonna go a penny above what they have to. It's gonna be the same setup where you have teams that are trying harder and some teams that aren't are spending more. And I think people look at it and go, well, finally, there's a cap. Our team is going to be in it every year. And I'm telling you, unless that band was so narrow that every team was at 250, which will never happen, it's not going to be the case. You're still going to have the haves and have-nots. It's not going to be this drastic thing in a random game. I'm going to tell you the best argument the league can make for a cap to players, which is we are going to do more for more of your members than you can possibly do in any near future. We're going to
and by the way, that's through the minimum. That's through increasing the minimum. That is critical. We're going to triple
the minimum salary.
Think about the impact. I remember when we were voting on what issues we cared about the most. Minimum goes up by $500,000. We've got 12 players at the minimum. Our payroll just went up $6 million before we even say a word, and we would always have 12 minimum guys on our team. So those things matter. That's why I think salary cap at the end, you're right, is going to be a red herring. But I do think that it will be used as part of a long work stoppage in order to get concessions, even more so, because I think Tony and Bruce are just outmanned, and it's not because of the commissioner's ambassador program.
No, it's not because the labor negotiations of 2020, 2026 into 2027 are not going to hinge on the commissioner's ambassadors program. I will safely declare that today. I do think look, if Rob proposes a cap, which we expect, and then he backs off of it. He'll probably still get, every time you don't give a cap if you're the players, you are still conceding things. It gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Last time it was the Cohen tax. And so even when the owners, it might appear, don't win, they didn't win the last round of bargaining, right? I think most people would say the players, came out with more than the owners did in terms of what they were seeking going into it. And now it's reversed. It's the owners who are going to be the aggressors in this one, the players who are going to be on the defensive. The players can fight off a cap and go, we fought off a cap. But what they're going to end up with is probably something they're going to like a little less, is my guess.
We're going to be able to cover this all throughout. Evan, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us again. Senior writer at The Athletic. Subscribe, read The Athletic, and author. I'd like to say best-selling author. Winning Fixes Everything. If you haven't read that book, read it. Evan, thank you for your time. We will definitely do this again.
Bye, David.
Bye, Evan. Thank you. Evan Drellich, ladies and gentlemen. I enjoyed that very much. I could have kept going with him, but there's too much I want to get to for the rest of today. Plenty of time to talk about collective bargaining, plenty of time to talk about the fights that are going to happen, and we're going to get some great quotes and great comments. Something came up. I spend my days, Coca, you know this. I have a funny life. We do this show for 2 hours every day, and we spend the other 22 hours sleeping for a little bit, watching a movie, a TV show, looking for great stories. I'm on X at David P. Samson. Thank you, by the way, for subscribing to the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. We're growing it slowly, but the right way. And the way to do it is hit subscribe because you're watching. If you're listening, then thank you. Keep listening and keep telling everyone you know about what we're doing. But I'm always looking for something. Something came up on my feed yesterday, and God knows I'm a victim of my algorithm. I have a package a day that keeps the doctor away. I'm sitting on this great back-saving cushion that I just got, sleeping on new sheets with a special new international adapter. TikTok shops, Instagram. Oh my God, it's so funny. I am exactly, I'm the guy who they get. But I need everything I buy. I really mean that. I do. I saw something from Pablo Torre yesterday. This is part of the show when I have to say that Pablo and I are friends. However, it doesn't mean we agree on everything, which we don't. Whenever we do shows together, whether it's the sporting class or I do other episodes of Pablo Torre Finds Out, or he comes on Nothing Personal, he has been what could only be described as a heater that you dream about. Whether it's Pablo Torre Finds Out about Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson, or Pablo Torre finds out that the NFL and the NFLPA are supposedly colluding, which they're not. Whether he finds out that, well, doesn't matter. He's just finding stuff out. Someone said, why is it that you are publishing a document that you got hold of, which is a grievance? Remember the J.C. Treader fake injury grievance? Go listen to past Nothing Personal episodes. Here's a shocker for you. We all called that Treader was done. D-O-N-E. And he really is done. And Pablo decided that he was going to share the entire grievance that was leaked to him by his source. And what a source he has. It's quite close to the sun. But he was going to put it only to his paid subscribers, because he's got subscribers. You can go to Pablo Torre Finds Out. You can be a paid subscriber, part of his Substack. I am, by the way, for disclosure purposes, personally, not Metalark, I, David Samson, am a paid subscriber to Pablo Torre Substack because I want to support my friend. I want to support journalism. I want to pay for something that I get information, pleasure. Someone tweeted at him, what are you doing? Why are you charging? And then Pablo responded with his explanation, which was tongue-in-cheek, but something like, hey, I'd like to keep paying our small staff that keeps giving you all of this great content. And it got me thinking, why is it that we all feel that everything should be free? Where did that come from? And it's not about capitalism. It's about the way the world is and the way it needs to be and the way it's always been. Go back to the beginning when there was a barter system. You can go back before currency. Do whatever you want. You can go millions of years, depending on your religion, thousands of years. How about to yesterday? And I promise you to tomorrow. The object of the game is that two sides value the same thing. And the question is, how do they value that same thing? A transaction happens when two sides value the same thing the same way. I have something I want to sell to you. I value it at $10. You have something that I have that you want to own. You want to buy it. You value it at $10. That's when a deal gets done at $10, and then the underlying item is worth $10. Where there are winners and losers in deals is when I value something at $8, but you value it at $10, and you pay $10 for it. You've gotten exactly what you valued. I, however, have gotten 25% premium on the way I value it. I only thought it was $8. I got $10. That's $2 more, 25% more. It can go the other way. I value something at $8. You value it at $10, but you only pay $8 for it. You got a 20% discount. Every day you do this. You don't complain about it. When you go to a restaurant, when you go to a store, when you go to a movie, anytime you're online, when you're shopping, all you're doing is valuing a product. You're looking at what the offer is for that product, and you're deciding, hey, where do I stand on this? You don't realize the decisions you're making, but you're doing it every day, all day. When there is not a meeting of the minds, because I value something at $10 and you value it at $2, and therefore I don't sell it to you at $2 because I value it at $10. I ask for $9, $8, and then I say, forget it. It's not even worth it to give to you. And you're like, I'm not paying $8. Forget it. I value it at $2. What happens? 1, you don't get something. Although you only valued it at $2, you don't get it. Your value is 0. I don't sell something. I valued it at 8 or at 10, but I got 0 for it, which means I still have it. The question is, what is it? Is it something that has an expiration date? Is it a quart of milk? Think about milk versus a car, versus a house, versus a shirt. If the grocery store doesn't sell the milk or doesn't buy the milk from the farmer, the milk spoils, and then its value to both sides goes to 0. If you walk off a car lot and you don't buy a car for 25 grand because you think it's worth 20 and the dealer won't go below 25, they go to the next person and the next person. There is no expiration until there's a new year of new cars, in which case the price of the old cars will go down and you can spend your 20 on that 1-year-old car. The whole market system is always evaluating value, up, down, sideways. How is it that there is something that you think that you value as free, which means you value it at 0, which means you don't want it? If you don't want Pablo's information that is behind a paywall, it is a very, very simple math equation. You don't buy it. How many things are there that you don't buy because of that vigorish, because of that delta in value? But to be angry at someone who values what they do, what they have, what they own, at a number that you disagree with, goes against the entire principle of our system, which is the exact perfect system. Because if everybody agreed with you, then you'd have no subscribers. If everybody agreed with you, no one would watch his show. If everyone agreed with you, then Pablo would have to change the price. And in fact, it could go all the way to the other side of the pendulum where he's got to pay you to read his stuff or to watch his show. It's not the case right now. Have you ever bought something that said batteries not included? Good movie with an asterisk. Do you get upset? Do you get upset or happy when batteries are included with something you buy, but you don't realize that you actually paid a premium to have the batteries included, that if they weren't included, you could buy the batteries from someone who valued them at a lower price and put the batteries in that electronic item. But for whatever reason, when it says batteries not included, you feel like, oh my God, I'm getting screwed. I just want them included. It's the concept of all in that we do at a ballpark. Hey, come buy this ticket. One price. You're going to get food. You're going to get beverage. You're going to get parking. Wink, wink. What you don't know is we've calculated about $30 for food, $50 for parking, and about $50 in drinks, and then $50 in the ticket price. We would have just sold you the $50 ticket, and then you may not have bought all that food, beverage, merch, or parking. But you have an all-in price, and you feel like, man, this is amazing. I'm getting a deal. You feel like you're getting value. We feel like we're giving and getting value, and we've got a deal. It's how pricing, it's like dynamic pricing of items. It's like everything. I was taken aback by Coca. I think we all need to relook what we're doing. And if you don't believe that Pablo Torre is adding value, then you're missing the boat. For me, all of the podcasts that we listen to, whether it's Dan's show, my show, whatever it is you're doing, what if we were behind a paywall? Would you not listen? Maybe a percentage of you wouldn't, but the percentage of you who realize that what we are giving you is available for free on YouTube, Nothing Personal with David Samson, or wherever you get your podcasts, it is free. Where is the money coming from? That's where advertising comes into play. We'll talk about all of this more, but the takeaway, please subscribe to Pablo Torre's Substack. The best thing about a 2-hour show in my mind is we get updates during the show because we're live, we're unscripted, we're unedited. We did a whole thing about Mike Brown and the Bengals before the break. We go to break. I'm not going to have Evan Drellich sitting around. That's not nice, especially at 4:50 a.m. However, what I didn't know 20 minutes ago, which I know now, Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals, that famous player who we were talking about, by the way, he's not at camp. He just posted a picture on Instagram that he's in Florida. It's not spring training, folks. That's not where the Bengals have their training camp. Mike Brown had acknowledged that dealing with Trey Hendrickson has not been easy. What he's not telling you, and what Trey would like you to know, and I'm happy to carry the water for Trey on this for a second. Hendrickson is third in sacks since 2021. Good player. Only Myles Garrett and TJ Watt have more sacks. You may know the name Myles Garrett and TJ Watt because TJ Watt was just on the show, not as a guest, because he's the highest paid non-quarterback in all of football for the Steelers. Well, it turns out, according to Adam Schefter, the insider who got the beef from Claire, that the Bengals and Mike Brown, which is his right as owner, are only offering Trey Hendrickson 1 year of guaranteed money. Horrors. How could you only do 1 year? It's outrageous. Well, the fact is that Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, Max Crosby, actually, they all got 3 years of guaranteed money when they got their new deal. And so Trey Hendrickson said, what about me? I want my 3 years. And Mike Brown said, okay, I'll give you 1 year. That's called a standoff. And you know how those end. Either the owner gives or the player gives, or the Bengals will move on without Trey Hendrickson. What do I say happens here? Eventually, the Bengals are going to have to give, which is why when teams are giving contracts away, the guaranteed money matters, the guaranteed years matter, because players have the view, hey, you did it over there, you meaning owners. Why can't you do it over here? I'm not going to settle for less than what my counterparts are getting. It's not fair. What the players may overplay when they overplay their hand is owners don't have to act in concert. They don't have to follow the lead of the most and least rational owners. We'll find out what happens. I got a second update. It's a winner. Lloyd Howell's having a bad week. Just bad. He had it all. He was sitting there at Tootsie's, thinking to himself, I'm getting paid. I make millions of dollars. I'm the executive director of the NFLPA. I've got a room full of dancers. I've got people with me. I'm on my expense account. I'm feeling good. Then, in the snap of a finger, and in the keystrokes of Pablo Torre finds out Lloyd Howell and his consigliere, J.C. Treader, gone, forgotten, finished. Plenty of family time for everybody. The update is that Lloyd Howell had a side hustle. Remember, he was the consultant for the Carlyle Group, an independent consultant for the group that is one of the 3 approved firms who get to invest in NFL teams. Word came out yesterday. This is good, Coca. Lloyd Howell has resigned from the Carlyle Group. Bummer. The spokesman refused to say when Howell resigned or why. This was all discovered and written about by Don Van Natta, ESPN. Why do you think the Carlyle Group wanted nothing to do with Lloyd Howell? Do you think that Lloyd Howell resigned on his own? Do you think he felt so badly about what happened at the NFLPA that he called up the Carlyle Group and said, hey, I appreciate the millions of dollars you're paying me as well, but I got to tell you, I'm of no use to you now. I'm a persona non grata. I got no connections. My Rolodex got totally erased. I have no connections. I can't in any way assist you. Therefore, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to resign. If that happened, I am 6'5", 210 pounds. Instead, the Carlyle Group called him up just the other day and said, thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on, let's play. Does it make sense that the Carlyle Group would want to be associated with Lloyd Howell? No. You can't have the appearance of impropriety. You wish they always had, but now it's at light. That's the whole purpose of journalism. It was brought to light. Now, the existence of the impropriety, which always existed, has now been brought to light. So now the firm has to say, oh, sorry, we can't be associated with that. Lloyd, we're going to have to let you go. But we respect you. We love you. We wouldn't have let you go if it weren't for that damn guy, Scooby-Doo. But we'll let you resign. So Lloyd Howell resigns. The reason why it's been a bad week for him is that when he's going to get a new job, because eventually you got to, pay your own car service to go to Tootsie's, is you got to figure out how do you add value to your next employer. Lloyd Howell will be doing something outside of the public eye, outside of sports completely, will not be involved in NFL or anything NFL adjacent. He may open up a consulting firm called LHJ Incorporated, Lloyd Howell Jr., but at the end of the day, it's going to be years before he will be able to get his income back to where it was that was thrown away because of the things that he did and that Pablo Torre found out. Life is short. We talk about that on this show all the time. I am incredibly emotional about that, which you think I'm made of wires, but I'm not. I am very cognizant of the sands that are flowing through my hourglass. Mortality is something that I struggle with every single day. Every time a story comes out of someone dying, I hear it every day, whether it's my great friend's son's friend who got run over riding his bike, whether it is someone who dies too young of cancer, or whether there's a terrible accident. It just triggers, and I assume it does the same thing for all of us. I guess it's why watching Dying for Sex impacted me the way it did. Malcolm Jamal Warner died at 54 years old just yesterday in Costa Rica. You may not know him, but you should. Theo in The Cosby Show. An unbelievably successful show that has had an unbelievably unfortunate end because of Bill Cosby and the monster that he is. Made worse by the fact that he was our dad. He was the TV dad to so many, not just black kids, white kids, all of us. We looked at the Cosby family and said, that's what we want to be. That's what we wish we lived in. We wish we wish we were Theo. Well, he was in Costa Rica swimming in the ocean, and the current got him, and he drowned. I had a good friend in elementary school whose father drowned the same way, and it was just out here in Long Island, and it was just a staggering tragedy that the impact and the ripple effect continues Happened at the camp I was at on an overnight where a kid drowned. Just the concept of the power of water. I just want to point out, please, water is dangerous. A, learn how to swim. B, the ocean, it's no joke. It's way stronger than you are. And if you find yourself caught in a current, do not swim straight to shore. You swim with the current diagonally towards shore. You're not going to end up back where your umbrella is, back where your things are. Learn how to float, and I am not blaming Malcolm Jamal Warner at all, or anyone who drowns. But the fact is that people don't realize the danger of the ocean and currents. Please, it's dangerous as hell. Rest in peace, 54 years old, children, just a whole life in front of him. I'm 57. I feel like I'm in the third inning. And it would be cool to be 41 and still playing basketball, wouldn't it? 41 seems old, unless when you're 20, 41 seems ancient. When you're 57, 41, it's like a kid. Do you have facial hair? Chris Paul signed with the Clippers, and everyone is losing their mind. This is the greatest signing ever. They got him for $3.6 million. He's providing depth in a way that's going to give night sweats to the Western Conference. They've got a deep team. He's in his 21st season. Now, he was great, but they're now talking about him bringing lob, what is it called, Coca? Lob ball? Lob magic? Lob? What's it called? Lob City. He used to, when he was on the Clippers, it was Blake Griffin and another person who I can't remember. Anyway, Chris Paul, really good player. He's 41. He's a bench player at best, but they're saying, oh, he may start instead of Bradley Beal. My God, I'm not saying Bradley Beal's terrible. I'm just saying he's overpaid, but I digress. The way I look at these deals is I always look at you and the way you look at the deals. And do you know how I know the way you look at the deals? Is I look at our friends at DraftKings. Guess what? They've got Chris Paul. They've got Brook Lopez. Amazing. He's 37 years old. Don't forget Harden, 35. Kawhi Leonard, the great Kawhi Leonard, the Hall of Famer Kawhi Leonard at 34. If he's as healthy as he was with the Nuggets, then we are GTG. This Clippers team is rolling. For crying out loud, they've got Bogdanovich in the second five. They're 10 deep. Never seen anything like it. How come they're plus 650 to make the conference finals, which is 7th in the Western Conference? Why is it that no one recognizes the fact that the signing of Chris Paul or the signing of Lopez or having Harden and Leonard and bringing back Harden at that ridiculous deal, they haven't caught the Thunder? Forget the Thunder. They haven't caught the Nuggets. They haven't caught the T-Wolves. They haven't even caught the Golden State Warriors, for crying out loud, Meatloaf. Oh, but they've got John Collins too. Okay, they're still plus 650. Guess what? This is wait to see worthy, Koga. It's an official wait to see where we tell you something happens, and then we will revisit this one. But you can book it on this day, July the 22nd. The Los Angeles Clippers and their desperate owner, Steve Ballmer, will not make the Western Conference Finals. Now, you may say, David, that's hardly a big wait to see. But the way people are talking, you're going to read about it. And maybe it's coming from LeBron's camp, but you're going to read that Chris Paul going to the Clippers, it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And my view is it has nothing to do with even rocks or paper or scissors. It's barely an ad. It's a $3.6 million veteran exemption to pretend that a team has depth in case Bradley Beal still stinks and Harden gets hurt and Leonard gets hurt or Harden's ineffective and all the things that actually happen. It's just business. Welcome to the clip joint, Mr. Paul. We'll be back tomorrow. This is nothing personal.